Welcome, ASLers. We have another analysis and replay for you today. This is Parting Shots ASL Scenario AP91, which means it comes from an action pack. And it is from To the Bridge, action pack number 9. Might be the second scenario I play. Yeah, second scenario I played from this. I think Langoan Airfield. Maybe that was Bounding Fire. Hell, I don't know. Anyway, 3 new maps, 10 new scenarios. The new maps are going to be Fortenberry maps, which means they're going to be calling them the big, wonky, kind of squarish ones instead of the elongated, rectangular ones. So, really like those types of maps. You'll see the setup over here on the side when I show you to you in a moment. And overdue. Long time overdue. I think you could put more terrain, more action, more activity on those maps than you can in some of the other ones. And the overlays won't be as impactful, I believe. So, why To the Bridge? Why, Stu? God dang it. The Japanese, why? I don't play Japanese. Nobody cares. No one cares. Well, because I was playing in the WARR 1942 scenario tournament, and essentially all the scenarios are from 1942, theoretically balanced from the ROAR record. Can't really use anything else because nothing else is existent for all intents and purposes. And be that as may, we took those win percentages to be 55% or less in terms of 50 to 55, not less than 50, of course. But theoretically, a balanced scenario. This scenario here is a conflict between some Ghurkas and the Japanese and some Burmese Independence Army that is assisting the Japanese in this particular scenario. So this scenario takes place in Burma, obviously. Taebuchang, which is just at the tip of the Burma near the ocean. So it's not deep in the jungles or anything like that. Kind of more industrialized, so to speak, edge. You have a rail, obviously, part of the map. So obviously there's going to be some sort of, not as much jungle terrain dominating the battlefield. And to be honest with you, it really doesn't dominate this battlefield pretty much whatsoever. It's just a small portion of it. So let's go check out what the victory conditions are in the Parting Shots. All right, so here we have the victory conditions. The Japanese win at game end by amassing more VP than the British. Casualty victory points are awarded normally in each multi-hex building controlled. The entire building is worth a number of victory points equal to the number of hexes of that building. So there's not a location control, there's not a hex control, there's building control. You need to understand the differences between those before even partaking in this fine cuisine that we have for you today. Go read those. Chapter A, I think number 25 is the rule section. Anyway, it's right there at the end of the chapter. Building control, you should probably read every single time building control comes into play. Everyone gets it screwed up, and you simply lose games when you do that. So understanding what you need to do and how you need to do it, kind of important. So go check those sections out anytime you have a building control victory condition, whether it's location, hex, or full building. And know how all those can apply. Hex control is really, really different. They usually don't use hex control in many victory conditions in terms for buildings. So that can be really awkward when you end up reading that. Pay close attention to the hex control with regards to buildings. And you'll see that, oh, yeah, this is quite interesting. So anyway, 7A and 22 are the boards that we have here on the side. 6.5 Japanese turns, essentially 7 Japanese turns to act. 6 for the Brits. So the Brits do not get the last move. If the Japanese player can get to a building, then the Brits are pretty much screwed. So let's take a look at the OBs real quick. These are very interesting OBs. Let's level that out. We've got the elements of the 1/3 Regiment 3, whatever that. I'm not sure what that is. I'm not military personnel. Ghurka Rifles, 48th Infantry Brigade. So ELR 5, which means for all intents and purposes, they're never going to be failing a ELR check in this scenario. Maybe if they're like some 7-0 leaders, but there are none. They set up on board 7A. We'll go over that in a second. In hexes number 18 and or on board 22. And conceal if you're in concealment terrain. So you'll see a couple of units on the map in the replay that are not concealed. And I'll remind you that when that shows up anyway. But this is your OB. So if, let's say, the Brits set up most of their guys in concealment terrain, you're not going to see where his units are deployed. So you essentially have to track these units and just try and decide how his setup is so you can either effect a perfected assault on it or determine what his intentions are. And I found out by turn 2 pretty much how he had set up his units. But note here, 6 full squads, 6 half squads. This could be a very important point later on. Good leaders, high morale leaders. Support weapons are here. The mortars are important, but not overwhelming. LMG, good for a nice fire lane. Pretty much that's a perfect example of what that thing's going to be used for. Enter turn 5 on the north edge. Look where that reinforcement's going to come into play. Turn 5. Mind you, what did I just say previously? How many turns does the Brit have in this one? 6 turns. So these units come on, move once, and then they move twice. These units right here have 2 movement phases in the game. So how would that affect the game? How much firepower does this thing have? It's got 4, 6, and then 2 firepower of 2. So one thing you need to understand, again, number one thing is understand how to incorporate your OB in your game plan. How much firepower can these people rest, right? You say, Stu, well, it's 6 firepower and 2 shitty 2 firepower attacks. You'd be wrong. You'd be damn wrong. These are carriers. Carriers have the unique ability with half tracks to combine fire groups with infantry personnel, and your 9-1 leader could actually affect the fire. So technically, if all these were stacked together, or let's say one of them were stacked with these dudes, that'd be an 8 firepower chart, right? You have a ton of -1 leaders. So if these guys are set up later in the game with a couple ragtag units in the back, and you have a long 2 or 3 hex convoluted fire group, the carriers can be part of that. And they could be connecting the fire group. Mind you, bow machine gun, that will come into play as we look at the map here in just a second. So, carrier is very special. This is an open top unit. It has, I believe, truck movement on it. And there are roads in this particular scenario. Usually in PTO, roads do not exist. We'll go check out the SSRs here in a second. And you will see that the roads do indeed exist on the top of the board. Very large, simplistic railway, elevated railroad. Is it elevated or embankment railroad? Embankment railroad, not elevated. Elevated would be level 1. Obstruction. Embankment is a hillock. And essentially, it's a wide wall, but it has some really odd LOSs in terms of you can still see someone like 10 hexes away, as long as they're next to the hill lock. Or in this case, embankment railroad. All right. So again, something to take into account. Now, what else do we know about this scenario? It's a casualty victory point scenario. So what can the carriers do to minimize their loss in terms of, getting smoked by some anti-tank guns, some machine guns, which have some firepower on them, or simple close combat? Well, you can have your crew here is going to be a 2-4-8 half squad. It's not going to be a 1-2-7, 1-2-8. It's a 2-4-8 half squad. And it can move and unload in the same turn because it's a carrier. So these guys can hop out of the carrier, to my understanding, and they could take the bow machine gun with it, which would be a normal, simple machine gun. So if you have a 2-4-8 plus the LMG, what did you just take out of this vehicle? Well, how many victory points is that worth? You have to know how much that's worth from the beginning. Most AFBs with armor less than 5 will be 5 points. If they have a main armament, which this one does, is a bow machine gun, a crew, and the AFE at the end of the game. So if the 2-4-8 jumps out with the LMG, it took 2 points from the crew and 1 point for the main armament, because then this will have no main armament. So that husk of a vehicle is only worth 2 points, even if it gets destroyed. So you could technically minimize the loss potential of this vehicle. Now, granted, it's got 27 movement points, and you might be able to use that to your benefit. So very versatile vehicles. Read up on your notes anytime, especially with the British, that you have any vehicles. They got some wonky ass shit in their OBs. Stuff that fires at 3 o'clock. The stuff that only fires between 12 and 9. You got AVREs. You got smoke coming up the yin yang. You've got this. You've got that. Weird shit. It's like what you found in an old garage sale, like from some old geezer that died 100 years. Just it's some weird crap. So very interesting evaluation you must use for this. Again, they are on the game for 2 turns. Could they simply just be there to retake a victory point thing? We'll go into that. So we'll take a look at that in a second. Japanese. No. 5 8 morale units, 6 8 morale units, 5 447s, 6 248s. So you have essentially 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 squad equivalents up here with 4 leaders. You have 10, 11 squad equivalents with 3 leaders. These guys are special breed, and I'm not including them for obvious purposes here in just a moment. The Japanese setup, adjacent to the road, on board 7 and hexes less than 14. Very restricted setup. We'll see that in a second. This kind of ties into Scenario Special Rule 3, which I still hesitant on, wondering why the hell the first part of that is in there. So let's go to the other special rules first. So Burmese ELR 5. What are the Burmese? If they have an ELR 5 and they look like this, guess what? Probably going to be partisans. Probably going to be using partisan rules. You got 3 leaders, possible bonsai charges, excellent morale 9. I love the 9 morale leaders. 9, even 2-1, 9-1 leaders. 2 dismantled mortars. Love that they're dismantled. Again, you can start your weapons dismantled if you wish. And for all those that hate these mortars because they're 4 portage points, either A, put them with your damn leaders so they can carry part of that to go full MPs, or B, dismantle them and then bust ass normally. It's as simple as that. So these mortars are far too valuable to leave laying around the battlefield at all costs. And you'll see exactly why that is so during this game. So, scenario special rules. Let's kind of burn through these. EC or dry. Ha ha ha. Let's burn through them. No wind at start. Oh, rats. PTO is in effect, including light jungle, and then you have some exceptions here. Brush remains brush, which means it's not bamboo, which means you can move. All board 22 roads and bridges exist, which in PTO they would not. And no buildings or huts, regardless of where they are. So, for all intents and purposes, the only real effect you have is swamps, light jungle, kunai, and that's about it. Swipe. That's about all the terrain you're going to see. That will be normal in a PTO scenario. And then all buildings are wooden and ground level only. I actually love that. That way you don't have to worry about this bullshit control. Guys routing upstairs. You got to spend 12 turns getting those guys out of the buildings. All it does is it allows the designer, instead of making it a 9-turn scenario, it's a 7-turn scenario. Essentially, you can cut 2 turns off, another hour of play, guys mopping up and doing bullshit. It's boring movement, to be honest. So make them ground level, makes it mono y mono. You got to bust ass. It's sort of starter kiddish, I want to say, but this particular scenario is far from starter kiddish. But it's all one level, except for, I think there's a stream. The road is an embankment railroad. You see the rule that you will be reading before you even set up. You need to understand LOS on that. You need to understand terrain benefits. You actually get a benefit if you're behind the embankment or the embankment railroad. So, and you have to understand the line of sight. It's pretty clear, in my opinion, but read it. And of course, if it talks about embankment railroad, this will shoot you in the direction of chapter F, which will be hillocks. Read that example like 30 times. Read all of the examples. Get the map out. Set it up on Vassal if you need to. Photocopy it. Print it out. Get it in front of you. Just get it in front of you, and you can understand how those lines of sights and modifiers for +1 for being behind a hillock apply in this situation. Place overlays, they're just railroads. They're straight railroads. All British are Ghurkas. You will be reading this, of course. Carriers are 248s. We already went over that. But D682, I think, is the carrier rules. You will be reading those to understand how you disembark from the carriers, knowing that they cannot button up. So if they get pinned or broken, all that stuff affects them differently than a normal CE crew. So very different vehicles. Know them, learn to deal with them, because they're in most British scenarios. Ghurkas, for all intents and purposes, are Japanese in this scenario. If you are, they're stealthy. I think they're stealthy if they are in jungles, and they may also announce hand-to-hand combat if the attacker or if they ambush, of course. And they have the same restrictions of hand-to-hand combat as the Japanese. You can't be pinned. You can't be less than first line. Things like that. So for all intents and purposes, they are the equivalent to Japanese in close combat. This, if you do not understand how this, being Ghurkas, impacts the conduct of the game, you will straight up lose as the Japanese. I didn't realize it until like turn 3, and then had to adjust my gameplay, and came to the sad realization that these guys are badass, and that we have to do something differently, and we've got to do it now. So learn that before the game starts, before turn 3, and you'll fare far better. Contrary to this, that's what I talked about before with the Japanese in turn 3, or SSR turn 3. Contrary to G1.631, which you're going to look up right now and read what that means, the Japanese have been out utilize HIP. Why? The Japanese are attacking. You see the map. I'll show you the map here. Oops, not that. I'll show you the map here. The VPs on the top of the map. You get your victory point buildings up here. You have various locations, right? And the Japanese setup, the Japanese are maybe set up here. Why? And guess what? Look, there are literally 5 hexes in which the Japanese can set up HIP. Don't really think the Brits are coming after you. Look at the board. Again, casualty victory points, buildings are worth 1 point per hex of the building. So if you control this building, how much is this building worth? Well, Stu, I think it's worth 4 because I can count the 4. 3, 3, 2, 3, 2. So you have 7 points on this side and 6, 7, 8, 10 points on that side. So if, let's say, the Japanese were to assault only this side and they got both of these buildings, hell, even got this one over here, that's 9 points. How much do the Brits have? 8 points. So just by generically going by that, it looks to me as if the building control is probably going to be spread even. And if it's not, it's whoever gets their ass kicked worse than the other opposing player. So if it looks like it's an even fight, and again, you've got this giant railroad right here blocking LOS. If I was right here, I don't have line of sight over here because the railroad's in the way and there's no upper level. So this will essentially block any lines of sight except from this location to locations on this side of the board. So this is a pretty key location. Okay. And considering most of this here is open ground, here and here, you know, it restricts it. He actually pushes the Japanese further over if they're going to advance. And guess what? Through the stream, which slows them down. So that's 3 to go in, 2 to come out. That means they're CXing or 1 hex and advance out. So the British defense is going to be important on how to try to evaluate on how they're defending these buildings. These are much further in the back. Are they obtainable? Obviously, because it's part of the scenario. But again, you as the Japanese player at this point, knowing that the Ghurkas are pretty good in close combat and that they start concealed, it's going to be difficult if you advance in there, or even if you just advance into close combat. The hand-to-hand combat is going to be the equalizer. They Stu, I mean, they're going to get their ass kicked. They've got a whole bunch of half squads, and you've got a whole bunch of full squads. To be honest with you, when you do hand-to-hand combat, you want to be the half squad going against the full squad and not vice versa. Say, Stu, you're an imbecile. Why would you think that? Well, look at your hand-to-hand combat chart. Neil doesn't have one in this particular chart, so we're going to look at this one over here. Let's find one right now. All right. Close combat table. Red numbers apply to hand close combat only. So, you're in close combat. You are the Japanese player. You ambush or you don't ambush the Ghurka unit. However, the Ghurkas, I believe they have a -1 in close combat. Japanese, -1 in close combat. So everyone's subtracting 1. If you have a squad versus a half squad, the Japanese need what? What do they need to kill a half squad in close combat without any ambush and without any leaders? Two to 1. They need a 9 -1, which would be a 10 for casual reduction. Almost guaranteed. All right. All right. So that's a what, 87% chance, something like that, to get 1 victory point. Here we go here. 1 to 2 needs a 6. 7 for a casualty reduction. So he rolls a 7 and he gets 1 half squad. He exchanges them on a 7, straight up 7 or less. Technically, he will get a 1. He will kill another equivalent half squad if the final result is a 6. So if he rolls a 7, subtracts a 1, or rolls a 6, rolls a 7 and it's a 6, that's a CR. Rolls a 6, that becomes a 5, it kills the unit. So 47% chance of 2 points. I think it's 58% chance of getting at least 1 point. You are probably going to be dead. Whoops. You're going to be this -1. But you can score twice as many points as the enemy. So given the 1-to-1 ratio, so let's say you at least roll 50% on your dice. So at worst, you're in 6 combats, you're going to score at least 3 kills in those 6 combats simply by the 7. And it's obviously a little bit better than that, right? So 3 of the combats out of 6, you are going to get 3 of the points back that you just lost for the Japanese player wiping you out. We're just going to assume it's 100%. So he wipes you out, gets 6 points. You automatically get 3 back by rolling a 7. If any one of those gets to be below, let's say one of the misses, instead of being a 0, was actually less, because we're talking about 7. Now what happens if you need a 6 or less? You know, one of those last 3 remaining rolls is going to be a 6 or less, just on basic percentages. So you're going to score 5 points on average, and he's going to score, let's say, take the 3%, not 3%, it's like 8%. So he's going to be scoring 5.4 points on average. So essentially it's even overall. The overall gain is even because he can only score 1 point on you. You could score 1 or 2. So, but given the roll of a 6 or less, not that hard to do, you could essentially you're ahead on the victory points. So you don't really want to go 2-to-1 versus the house squads. You'd much rather go as the Japanese player 1-to-1 versus the full squads. Remember, if you're going to capture half the board, he's going to have the other half that's going to be even. You at least want to exchange even dice here in the middle to give you a fighting chance. If you start tackling his half squads and going 2-to-1 versus 1-to-2, then you're going to end up short. Especially even if he has a single leader with that. You're going to go down to 3-to-2, and he's going to still stay at 1-to-2. So you're going to lose a little bit off of that. So, of course, he doesn't have that many leaders. But, again, that's what the Ghurka brings to the table. It brings the close combat as the great equalizer in this scenario. If you don't understand that, if you just go willy-nilly, if you send 2 squads in there, let's say you send 2 squads against a half squad. Who cares what your ratio is? You're going to kill him. We already determined that with the 2-to-1 -1. So you're a 4-to-1 -1. Gee, wow. A 12 kills him. Right? A 12 will just kill him. The 12 still counts. And what's his odds? He's 1-to-4 against you. So you increase your odds from like 92% to 100%, which is a giant increase of 8% to get 1 point. And when you went to 1-to-4, he only dropped down to like what's this, 28% maybe? Or maybe the 4's 28%. This might be like 32%. chance of killing 2 units. Again, he has to roll a 5 to kill both the units, which means a 4-point swing, which is 4 times the amount. And I'm sure it's much more than 25%. If he rolls a 6, he gets a casualty reduction. Guess what? Random selection, he could still get a squad's worth of units out of that. If you rolled Yahtzee on that, 1 in 6 chance, then he's still ahead in points. So you're not decreasing his odds by any considerable amount. Matter of fact, you're giving him more points to score off of. So his odds really don't change with that -1. That 1 column shift. Be aware of that. You don't want to go into close combat with 248. Just break them. Either and that's the kicker. Another thing with the Ghurkas is surrender via the route phase method or be disrupted. So if you break a Ghurka anywhere in here, let's say you're fighting over here and you break a Ghurka, he's just simply doing the SK route out of the building. He is not going to surrender via the route phase method. So you're not going to get him doing that. Even if you go behind him and you surround him that he can't route anywhere, he will FTR. He will not surrender to get those casualty victory points doubled at the end of the game. Not gonna do it. Not gonna do it. So he's hard to kill. You have to break him, 8 morale, chase him down, break him again. He's not going to surrender. You have to understand that going to scenario. Again, Ghurkas. All it says, all British units are Ghurkas. That has a gigantic impact on this game. All right? So, general knowledge. And again, what did we not see in the scenario special rules, gentlemen? What did we read in the scenario? What didn't we see down here? EC or dry. Kindling not applicable is not printed on the map. But let's take a look at our scenario. Let's take a look at our map and let's determine if that's going to be an issue. Again, kunai. Kunai is going to be here. 2 movement points instead of 1.5. We've got jungle. We'll get to the jungle in a second. Jungle. Brush. Probably not going to go this way to go that way, but you never know. Palm trees. No huts. These are buildings. Brush, which makes a big difference instead of bamboo. And here's a swamp. Giant swamp. You're not going in here anyway, regardless of whether it's a swamp or a marsh, you're not going in there. And then we have some more jungle up in this area. And then you start penetrating into the town. And pretty much at this point, once you actually start duking it out in the town, the only jungle you have, very isolated here, and this is really isolated in the back. Okay? The rest of it's palm trees and buildings. Nothing new. So, Burmese. Why, Stu? Why do they give these stupid-ass Burmese 337, 70, garbage, garbo? Partisan counters represent Burmese Independence Army, BIA units, and use partisan rules. Again, give your rule section. Go check it out. Don't be stupid. BR units and any Japanese units moving in a stack with them enter jungle, kunai, and brush at a normal cross of 1.5 per hex. Stu, that ain't jack shit. 1.5. Let's go to the map. That ain't nothing. And notice your OB. 9, 1, 2, 3. 3 leaders. Let's say you stack 3 squads each. So 9 units. And there's going to be 3 straggler units left over. So you have 4 to 5 stacks. What do we have here? We have 3 units. Say, Stu, that's only going to be allowed to move 3 stacks of units in the forest. You can deploy these guys. Deploy those to assist these guys moving into the jungle, kunai, and brush in this case. All right? Because they really don't have a lot of firepower. Yes, they have 8 firepower. These guys aren't leading the charge, guys. Come on. Let's be real. 8 firepower is 8 firepower, but the movement benefits early on far outweigh the firepower they're going to do. Look, we already have 48, 52 plus 2 mortars. 8 to 52, ignore it. Not worth it. All right. So, they get to move through jungle. Over here. Kunai, ignore it. Brush, maybe. But you could bypass here and don't have to worry about that bullshit. So the brush is out of it unless you go this way. Right? So they're only going to be useful over here, and in here. And later on, as that fades, where can they be used on the top of the map? In the middle, over here, here, and here. Here, maybe, especially in this area. Say, Stu, how the hell are they going to be any good used in those areas? It's only like a 1 hex movement. Well, you tell me. Let's take this example up here. I kind of set this up. And this example here can occur right over here as well. Right? So the whole idea of the 1.5 movement, and let's say this is a half squad. All right. He's leading our troops through the jungle. And we've got some firepower up here. Let's see, we've got 6 firepower right here ready to go. Right? If you were to move normally, assault moving to here, how many movement factors have you expended? Say, Stu, I'm not an idiot. That's 2. Yeah, obviously. 2 movement factors. How many times can he get shot? What do we have over here shooting at us? Huh? Bow machine gun, LMG. All of them have rate of fire of 1. Right? That's all you're going to get in this scenario. Rate of fire 1. But, let's say he gets lucky, rolls a 7, rolls a 1 on the colored die roll. He gets a rate of fire, shoots again. Gets a 6, gets a lucky shot. He stripes our ass. I said, damn it. Oh, man, these damn Vassal bot. Same old shit. Same shit, different day. All right, so we get a 6 lucky shot, and we just got rate of fire. We'll take another shot. Another 6 plus 1. We get another lucky shot. Oops. We don't want the... We get another lucky shot, and then this guy goes down to half squad. Okay, so we went from 4 to 2 firepower. Let's go back to state number 1. Add our partisan. Add our Burmese. All right, for all intents and purposes, if the 1 firepower is irrelevant, can't do jack shit. We assault move in there with the Burmese. How many movement factors have we expended? Yes, Stu, 1.5. What difference does it make? Well, you do not round up for that. So when these troops fire on you in defensive fire, they get 1 shot instead of a potential of 2. Or they could subsequent first fire. If these were squads, they could subsequent first fire. 12 firepower, subsequent at 6. Instead, we assault move in there, they get 1 shot at 12, and that's it. So that's what they could be used very much for in this scenario, or in any scenario in which the partisan or any other units imparts a special bonus to moving in certain terrain features. 1.5 eliminates that subsequent first fire shot or rate of fire shot at you. Okay? Big, big difference. Okay. Say, Stu, I'm going to bust ass. I'm going to be running crazy. I'm going to be starting down here. And I'm going to run up here with the leader. And the partisan leader will take all my guys over here in one movement phase. This 7-0 leader will have zero impact on increasing your movement factors for the Japanese. Partisan leaders have no leadership effect whatsoever on Allied troops. Leadership effect means direction. In fire combats, it will not prevent cowering if it is stacked with any Japanese units. It will not be leader loss morale checks. You will not get the 2 movement factor bonus because that's all in the leadership section of the rules. It imparts his leader ability in giving you those movement factors. So the 7-0 is simply leading you through the woods. And again, the other part about that is 1.5 per woods, or jungle in this case, means you can double time and go 4 hexes instead of 3, or instead of 2. 4 total hexes instead of 2 normal in a normal move, or 3 in a CX. So you get the extra hex and the possible 5th hex when you advance phase, but you'll be CX'd. So you, in this game here, with close combat all around, you most likely do not want to be CX'd within advance range from any of the opposing unit's forces. That extra -1, as we already described earlier, in the hand-to-hand combat is far too valuable a modifier. If you want to give that to him, I'm charging everything at you. First of all, you're going to be firing at him with an extra +1. He's going to have an 8 morale. He's going to get near you, next to you, jump on your ass in close combat. And as the attacker, he can engage in hand-to-hand. You're going to be +1, and which is going to cancel your -1 for being Japanese, for the most part, first line and elite. And he's going to be -1, and then -1 for CX. So his half squads become even more valuable, as his half squads can jump you, and instead of rolling a 7, as we discussed before, they get to roll an 8 to cows you reduce your squad. So, again, take it to the next step. So, one last thing. Why? You tell me. You write in the notes in the bottom. Again, you can type, use your keyboard. Why do we need the non-hip status? Why do we need the non-hip status? Let's take a look at that real quick. G1.631 hip. The Japanese player in a daytime scenario may always use hip for less than or equal to 10%, fractions rounded up, of the multi-man squad equivalents in his onboard setup OB and any single-man counter support weapon that sets up stacked with them. And then continuing on to the next page, going down, it talks about scenario defender, does not apply. These hip are in addition to the hip granted for other reasons. Example, the Japanese onboard setup OB for a daytime scenario includes 10 squads and 2 infantry crews. Gee, look familiar? Since the 2 crews are equivalent to a squad and disregarding deployment, he may use hip for 1 squad and both crews, or for 2 squads, even if the crews are manning guns. That would set up using hip anyway. So, why use hip in this scenario? Why is that hip taken away? Tank hunting hero? Would you put a tank hunting hero back? You could only set up right here. So you're only, 7 hexes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You can only set up hip back in this little area here. Why would you bother removing that? The only thing I can think about, and I'm not sure that it actually would come into play, is if you take your armored vehicles and you drive them on the road, and then you drive them down here, which is not a road. I don't believe that's considered a road by any stretch of the imagination. So if that's truck movement, That's 4 per hex. So if your vehicle gets down to this point, let's say at 3 movement points, and then he has 26 left, he's going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 6 more next turn. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right? So how much actually would that be? If this thing right here came on, open top, so he goes 1, 2, 3, and actually there is a road right here. There's a road that crosses it, so that would be 4. And then he would have 23, and I think those would be open ground hexes. Let me check. So here's the Embankment Railroad. Embankment Railroad crossings. Let me zoom in. Okay, whatever. Embankment Railroad crossing, the RR and the road are both at level 1/2. A unit which enters the road incurs no additional cost for changing elevation. So there is a road there. We actually didn't include that on this particular hex. So there's that is a road hex right there. We should have put a road thing there. But because sometimes a little detail like that might make a difference. Now let's see if riding along a road incurs different penalties. All right, using the power of the index and simple basics common sense. Embankment railroad hexes are treated as hill locks. Again, this is what you're looking up normally. Hexes for line of sight, TEM, and cost of terrain purposes, and units and wrecks in embankment are considered to be on a hill lock. Otherwise, embankment railroads are treated as paved roads as per 32.11, which is up here. All railroads use all rules pertaining to paved roads at the corresponding level. So that would be essentially movement in the open. That's the only thing I can think about in terms of not utilizing HIP, so you don't have some sort of squad, 2 crew, to get rid of that guy. If you guys, if you break a guy up, and let's say you go to state, and then you clone this. So you've got one of your, or maybe 2, because you could do 2. You could legit just hit these guys and wait for him to do this bullshit troll move, which is, if that's incorporated in the scenario, to be honest with you, that's pretty stupid chicken shit. I mean, why have units like that you just essentially have to drive off the board? Yeah, the 4 armor. Well, these aren't the real, the actual ones. It's a little different one. But they have 2 armor, small targets, hard to hit. They're going to be moving fast. If that's the strategy in winning this scenario for the Brits, it's a bad scenario. I'm not sure how many people may have realized that they can just avoid the points, because if you're ahead of points, this is the only points that the Japanese players can get back in a hurry. I mean, that's 10 points, essentially 5 squads. And there's not really much of a threat to them. You could literally just charge them and they're going to get smoked. Open top vehicles. Battle machine gun can't even be used in close combat. He gets no attack in close combat. Battle machine guns are only used to nullify the I don't have a machine gun, but no coaxials, no firing. These are free shots. And guess what? That's pretty easy to do, right? 2 little half squads, get 2 little shots. The close combat value of a half squad is 3. You've got open top vehicle -2. And if you should happen to have a tank hunting hero with you as well, because you're not going to generate him at all, he's probably going to blow one up by himself. And then you have 3 separate combat attacks at 5s for the mobilization, 4 for eliminations. So pretty easy to wipe them out back down there. And then hell, at that point, or if you jump out, he can capture those and all the points go up. So removing the hip, that's the only thing I can think of of that being occurred. Again, it's when you're coming north, entering the city, getting the fighting done, driving the vehicles past the Japanese and parking them back here while everyone gets slaughtered in the town. Pretty stupid, but it is ASL. You will have some silly, dumb things to do in an ASL game. And again, 1942. Why else are they there? Don't know. Let me know why you think that scenario special rule to eliminate the hip in their setup area of seven full hexes where they can be makes a difference. Other than this, nothing comes to mind because the Japanese need to be up here killing and taking victory point locations or buildings in this matter. So, the other thing on dry, and then we're done. ECR dry, probably not going to burn your victory point hexes, right? Fire back here, if you were to set a fire, probably going to be in this area. Not really in this area, maybe for the Brits, but the Japanese are going to be running through the area pretty quickly. You might be able to do over here. Minimal. Again, the Japanese are just going to be running through the area. They're not going to be staying behind. And they don't break, so it's not like they're going to be routing back to the fire. And there's no breeze to give you a smoke screen. But with those Japanese mortars, again, knowing your OB, Japanese mortars, what do they have? White phosphorus. White phosphorus can possibly generate a flame in what two conditions? Dry or very dry conditions. So there's a minor possibility of a flame being generated in this particular scenario. I mean, PTO being dry seems kind of odd, right? So there we have it. I think it's kind of lengthy, but those are just, again, those are just the simple observations where you need to get into your scenario. You need to read all these sections. Don't not read them. Embankment Railroad, I didn't even know it was paved road, to be honest with you. I played this scenario. I just thought it was essentially open ground. I think we just treated them as an open ground. If that's a paved road, what do you get on a paved road? Well, you might get a movement bonus. I'm not sure if that applies or not. I think that you don't. But who cares? Paved road is paved road, which means no fortifications. -2 in the open. So, it's a paved road. And those vehicles can blow down that road in the first movement phase that they come on the map. Ghurkas. Uber powerful. Carriers jump out, throw LMGs at you. Partisan units allow movement and assault move into jungle, kunai, and or brush at 1.5 moon factors so you don't get shot twice. I think that's a big use, and try to make use of that if you can. It's really not a lot of different areas. About the only area that might make a difference is right in the front. If you're stuck in the back, if you end up here, right in the advanced phase, next turn, if you assault move here, or right there, if you assault move here, he only gets one shot. And again, he's going to be concealed. Does he only want to take one shot? Probably not. So it allows the Japanese to get up into these locations, probably concealed. So play it as you like. I'm not sure if you've played this one before. It's been played a number of times, so maybe someone's played this one before. Let me know how your game turned out. I read one result. I think there was a result posted somewhere. I don't know, but I'll have to check it out. But that's what we're looking at here, and what you'll see next, not here, but the next scenario is a simple replay of parting shots again in our WARR 1942 tournament, and my opponent in that game is Mark Thompson. So we'll start that up real soon, and but right now, go play this scenario. I mean, if you like this scenario, go play it before you get to look at the other scenario that I'll set up, and maybe you'll be much more successful than I or Mark, as the case may be. Sniper 3, no big deal. 6.5 turns, quick fight. Go in there, kick some ass. So, guess what, guys? Go out there and go play some ASL.